All right, so I have a PowerPoint to show you guys. Try and get this out of the way for a second. So this is going to be very loosely based around acting for camera and how we are going to use that for Zoom and specifically for our Macbeth performances. So before we start, some initial skills that we're going to be talking about today are things that you need to remember are your lines. When you get into your character, you want to know your character's intention, or before you even start to look at the camera and working around that kind of thing. The reactions are very important, especially when you're on camera, because everything that you do is very close up, so everything is captured. So even if you make the tiniest little movement, everyone's going to see that in the final bit. But you need to remember to listen to each other so that your reactions are authentic and that you know what the other person is saying as well as your own lines. Movement, less is more, and eye lines and blinking. I put blinking there because I wanted to remind myself to go through blinking. Blinking is something that a lot of people do, and well, you know, everyone blinks, but when you're in front of a camera, people forget that when you're blinking, it shows up very, very significantly on the camera. So you've got to just be mindful of how much you're blinking and don't be constantly blinking because it can be quite off-putting sometimes. So when we're setting up our cameras and our devices, I've drawn like a little image here of what is a good way to be setting up our laptops. So we'll go through where you can put your laptop, where the camera is in relation to that. So if you have your webcam externally from your computer, or if it's part of your computer, where you're going to be looking to make it so we can cheat it so it looks more like a professional lens rather than just the webcam. Also microphones, I'm going to talk about external microphones or also the microphones that are in your computer already. Backgrounds, we've talked about that in the past. It's really great to have the blank backgrounds, and I've wrote poor man's theatre there because when you're in the theatre and you just have that black screen at the back, that is the best way to just use your imagination to create the scene rather than relying on the actual set and stuff, because we don't have any of that to work with. And then we're also going to talk about the lighting and background noises and distractions. So when we're going to be setting up our laptops and cameras, we want to set up the camera so that it's in level with our eyes, because the lens is the audience's eye. So everything that they're going to be seeing has to be from the level that either the director chooses or that works best for the scene. So your eye line should usually be like on eye line. So what we might do is put a laptop onto a dresser or something so that we can stand as well, because a lot of Shakespeare's voice comes from inside. You want to have access to your diaphragm, so acting from standing is going to be the best way to get the best performance and to really unlock that voice. So finding a nice high place to put it on, like a bookshelf, a chest of drawers. Earlier I did a bit of filming that you'll see in a bit, that I ended up stacking 3 nesting tables on top of each other to get the right eye line. So it might take a little bit of reorganizing your furniture, but setting it so that it's nice and high. Like at the moment I've got it on my bed, but this is the sort of height that you would want your computer to be at, so that we get a great level, and that you would want to set your laptop to a 90-degree angle as well, so that it's not looking like up towards your face or significantly down as well. So we want to make sure that we can stand. So when you're setting up your space, you want to make sure that you don't have anything that you might trip over. That might mean moving some more items out of the way so that you have enough space to walk into your setting, as well as move around during the scene if you need to. But when it comes to acting for camera, you want to make your movements as small as possible, because every movement you make is amplified. When we get into some back and forth, so I'm not, as I say, this is the first workshop that I've put together, so I'm not feeling terribly confident, but I'll try. So we could play with angles, and this might be something that Rob wants to do when you get into the individual scenes that are filmed. Playing with angles can show different levels of status. So if you have, say, Macbeth and just like a servant were in a scene, you might have a higher angle for the servant to be looking up towards Macbeth, and then subsequently Macbeth looking down. So we might be able to play with those kind of things, but that would be something that Rob would look into individually for each scene. And the closeness towards the camera. So we're talking about doing the soliloquies, like Lady Macbeth's soliloquy. She might be closer to the screen, delivering her lines directly into the lens, whereas in a scene where it's two actors conversing, you might be a little bit further back to show that their proximity is a little bit more casual, and like if you were like leaning in, you might be a bit more secretive and you don't want to be overheard, so you're sort of closer to each other. But the further away, the more space, and the more negative space as well, so you can move a lot more as well the further away you are from the camera. But the closer you are, the stiller you have to contain, like all of your movements have to stay quite contained. Go back to that, sorry. I drew this little picture here that you'll see on the side here. It's not great, but what it indicates is that we'd need to have lights on really either side of your laptop or computer, just so that you get an even amount of light onto the face and avoid backlighting as well. But I'll come back to lighting in a second. Oh, yeah. So I've got some examples of some bad lighting here. The final picture 6 is, no, 9 even, that is an example of great lighting. So he's got light coming from in front. If we got to film during the day, you might be able to stand in front of a window to make use of natural light. But most of the time we're going to be in the evenings because it's quite dark. So if you have your lights on either side, you could use a ring light if you like, which could go around your camera lens. There are some really good ones on Amazon, which are about $5, which are like a little clip, which I have at home, but I don't have with me to show, unfortunately. But they're really good because they just slot on over the top of your webcam, and then you have a nicely lit face. So you can change the lighting within a scene to make it more spooky, or if you had a handkerchief, for example, in a color, you might be able to put that over a lamp to give you a different color cast. But keeping things nice and simple for this type of situation, the best thing would be just to have your 2 lamps in front of you and avoid having light from behind because that can cast you into darkness. And well, unless you're going for that kind of thing, but we'll avoid that for now. Sound, if you don't have an external microphone, it's good to locate where your microphone is on your laptop. So mine are on the top either side of my webcam. So I would be focused on delivering my lines towards those microphones to make sure it's nice and clear. Like, I'm keeping my head quite level at the moment, so my voice is traveling forward into the microphones that are there. So an external microphone is very useful though, because they usually have dampeners. So if you have any background noise, it usually cancels it out a little bit. I've got a couple here as examples. So this is like a bendy mic. I would be able to put this quite near the front of my laptop. I like bend it down so it's not in the shot while we're filming, but I'd be able to have that there, and that's a plug-in microphone there. But then I've also got one of these which has this is a wind guard, or what they call in the business a dead cat, which is what they have on the booms, the fluffy bits on the end of a boom. That's called a dead cat. Fun fact. But yes, to reduce the sound that you might be picked up by your computer, if you close off your curtains, close any doors, and stay away from rooms that have loud appliances in it. That's probably just the best way to make sure you get the best sound quality. For backgrounds, we've talked about this again in the past. Hanging up sheets is great if you have a curtain pole, even if you decide to tape it to the wall, or fashion your own backdrop out of a freestanding wardrobe, like a coat rail or something like that. I actually have a backdrop set that came with everything that you'd need to put up a backdrop in your own house. So I think I got mine on Amazon, and it was about £60 for this big set, and it came with loads of different backdrops, including a green screen, and it came with lights as well. But really, all we want to do is keep a nice blank background, and you guys know that anyway, but this is useful for things like self-taping as well. Not that we're doing any of that. So before we want to start with any of the performances, it's definitely a good idea to get yourself warmed up. I am not warmed up right now. I wish I had warmed up beforehand, because I didn't think about how much I'd be speaking. Also, if anyone has any questions, don't worry, you just call them out and I will do my best to answer them. I know I ramble a bit. Yes, because I'm nervous.
You're doing really well.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so things that you want to think about when you're warming up before we do any recorded performances: be your body, so like any kind of tension that you might hold in your arms, in your neck. Everything transposes to the amount of tension that holds your voice. So making sure your body's warmed up is very important, and then you move on to your voice, because it's a muscle. You've got to make sure it's nice and warm, otherwise you might end up pulling your muscles and then not being able to speak, which I have done, believe me. I used to work at a Halloween park where I would talk for hours and tell people safety things, and then I wouldn't have any voice by the time I went back to school, and then I got told off by my acting teachers that I'd have no voice because I didn't warm up. Articulation, again, is the movement of your tongue to make sure you're nice and clear, and we're all trying to be RP as well for this. So when you're doing your voice warm-ups, which I'll go through some like examples as well, and I mean we could probably do a warm-up if anyone fancies it, but articulation will keep your tongue nice and loose so that you can make all those sounds nice and crisp and make sure that everything's enunciating nicely. Good way to do that is tongue twisters. Anything that you really like. I mean, she sells seashells, unique New York, red lorry, yellow lorry. It would be a bit sad if I went and tried to say it now and then messed it up. And when you're getting ready to do your scenes, it's good to go over any lines that might catch you up while you're reading them, anything that might sound slightly odd. Shakespeare, you've got your strange ways that he puts together sentences, because it's kind of like its own language in itself. So anything that you're reading through and you don't 100% know what you're saying, always go back, read it through again. And there are lots of places online like Spark Notes, for example, where they translate the Shakespeare into modern English, which makes finding the intention for the characters so much easier. I've done that a lot.
There's a website that's called No Fear Shakespeare, if anyone needs specific lines, and it translates every single line in each play.
Yeah, No Fear Shakespeare is a great one as well. I used to write down my lines in Shakespeare on one side of my page and then write down the translation on the other side. And any time that I would be reading and think to myself, do I know exactly what I'm saying? I'd refer to the other side of the page, make a note, and then continue until it sunk in. So I definitely recommend translating your lines if you are at all wary of them, and trust that your brain will find a way. Like, it's horrifying as soon as the camera's on and it's being recorded, your brain goes into, oh my god, do I actually know what I'm doing? Do I know what I'm saying? And if you've done the work, then you just need to take a breath, relax, and just think about being in the moment and listening to each other. That's the main thing that you can do. And if you need the time, something with screen acting, you get plenty of second chances to get it right. So if you mess up the first time, don't beat yourself up about it. We just stop, go back, try again. And no one's getting paid in this, so we don't have to say time is money, because if you're on a big film set, they might be a bit annoyed if you did it about 60 times and still couldn't get the line right. But we've got all the time in the world, and got to be like, just trust that you'll get there, even if it does take a little bit of time. So warm-up examples, very nice and easy things that you can do. Nice neck stretches. You can do, rest your arm on your head. You don't want to pull or anything when you're warming up. Just rest, and then that will be a nice stretch to get yourself moving. It gets the blood flowing as well. Shoulder rolls and getting everything moving. You can do that with your hips as well if you want to, like you're stepping over a gate kind of thing. Facial stretches, very important. Like, your cheeks will get very tired after doing the same scene over and over again. So you can do an exercise like you're chewing a big toffee, which, you know, chewing a big toffee like it's getting bigger and bigger inside your mouth. That's a really good way to get all this moving, stretching it out. Licking the inside of your teeth gets your tongue moving, and the inside of your lips. Oh, we all know these. And then prune and banana is my favorite for getting your mouth like nice and open. So you start with prune and then banana, like really wide and open. these are, yeah, we can go through these when we actually are recording, but just some things to go over. And then voice warm-ups, you start with your sirens, just make a like ing sound, and you go up through the range in like a figure of 8 kind of visualization with your voice. If I was going to do it, I'd be like that's a good way to start off. And you can do a vocal creak, which is you start high and then go ah, and that just resets your larynx and gets all of the gunk that's sort of in your throat gone. But you've got to remember to swallow it rather than cough it up, even though you want to cough it up. Just remember to swallow, because otherwise you'll have to start all over again. And then you've got your go through the different letters of the alphabet, and you can do Z's, R's that will get your diaphragm moving. So you can do Z, 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 Z. Oh my God, I'm flaking out right now. Does this make sense to everyone? Am I rambling too much?
That makes perfect sense. It's something that I've always been meaning to do with people and never actually ever got round to it. So it's a good reminder for me to actually get people to warm up as well.
Yeah.
I have like every vocal warm up under the sun. One of my lecturers at uni was Rachel Griffiths, who like wrote the book on vocal tech. So she taught me out like all of her little warm ups. So anything you need.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, Ruben's definitely the go-to for warm-ups rather than me. I was just writing down anything I can think of earlier. But yeah, when we're warming up, do some tongue twisters. I like to do Aristotle lost his bottle when he spied an axolotl. I used to do that when I did singing lessons, and you just do it over and over again as quickly as you can. You can do it in, what's it called? You know, when you do it in a note and then you do it the next note up and then you do it the next note up.
Scales, yeah.
In a scale, yes, that's the one. Do it in a scale, because then it gets it gets you warmed up that way. And face massages are wonderful, because once you've been doing all of your warming up, you'll find that you've got a lot more tension in your face than you notice. So a good place to massage is at the hinge of your jaw. Underneath this, your tongue is attached underneath your neck, and it's really good to give that a good massage as well. Get everything nice and relaxed, and even like in your cheeks and your forehead as well, because we hold a lot of tension in our faces, and especially when you're working with camera, you're going to be doing a lot of facial expressions. We're going to get to facial expressions near the end, because it can be a little bit daunting to think everything that you're doing with your face is going to be on camera. But if you give as much as you can always dial it back. But it's good to be really expressive with your face, because it shows a lot of character as well. And if you're getting nervous about doing a scene, a really good way to get pumped up is the fire breath exercise. Oh, I just went too far. Back we go. Fire breath exercise is where you use your whole body to draw in a breath, and then you push it all out really fast, like in a that's the kind that you do that several times. But if you ever start to feel lightheaded or anything, it's good to stop, have a drink of water, and then go again. But that gets your blood pumping, your breath is anchored. And also, if you want to just get pumped up to get ready to do a scene, put on one of your favorite songs that you like to jam to and have a little dance party and sing by yourself or with someone else. That's a great way to get pumped up to get ready to do a scene, especially if it's something emotional and it's going to be quite draining. You want to get yourself to that sort of space where you can do the best performance you can. So I've got a couple of films here which are from the Royal Shakespeare Company. This is actually on their website. It's very useful information that they've got. We're quite lucky. Obviously, we've got our scripts beforehand because Macbeth is supposed to be staged. But when actors are on set, they only usually get their lines the night before, if they're lucky, or in the morning when they're getting their hair and makeup done. So they'll sit with what they call their sides, which are little pieces of card with the lines that they'll be doing for the scenes that they're doing in that day. And I was actually on a film set myself yesterday, not doing anything exciting at all, except standing in the background, which was exciting in itself, but like not acting wise. So actors, when they get their sides, they will often have to learn it very, very quickly. But we have that gift of time. We can make sure that we rehearse everything. We're completely happy with the motivation of our characters and that we have the speech unlocked. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to play these videos in a second. So we've got Shakespeare's language and rhythm. So iambic pentameter is the rhythm that Shakespeare moves in. So it's da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. It's the heartbeat. But Shakespeare also works in prose and verse, which also gives us a lot of information about what the character is feeling at the time. And something that I learned when I was in university, I've never heard it before when learning Shakespeare up until I did As You Like It, was the idea of the caesura, which means to cut, which is the use of punctuation in the middle of a line. So when you look at Shakespearean text, you might have lines that run into each other, or you might have short sentences in the middle of each line. So you might have more than one sentence in one line. And that shows you that characters' thought process is moving very quickly. They're changing the sentence very quickly as they go, which could mean that they're excited or they're frantic or distracted because of being scared for whatever reason. But I'm going to play these videos now because I found them very useful and I think you might too. So we're going to watch about prose and verse first.
Shakespeare writes in a combination of prose and verse. Prose is a conversational way of speaking, which doesn't have a set rhythm or structure. Verse is defined by a rhythm and can rhyme, although it often doesn't.
What is prose? If you look at it on a page, it's not in sort of distinct lines. It's like sort of takes up the whole of the page.
So visually, it doesn't feel like it's got any structure to it necessarily. Okay?
It doesn't. It's not in iambic, is it?
It's not in iambic, so it doesn't necessarily have a kind of a strict rhythm to it. So let's have a little look at, we're going to have a look at Act 3, Scene 2, which is a small brief exchange between Hamlet and Ophelia just before the play within a play. Ophelia, can you have a little wander around? And Jamie, you're just going to follow Ophelia. And just read the scene as you go. So have a little one, you can wander into all of this space around here. Go.
Lady, shall I lie in your lap?
No, my lord.
I mean my head upon your lap.
I, my lord.
Do you think I meant country matters?
I think nothing, my lord.
Let's try it the other way and just again notice what you notice. Jamie, off you go.
Lady, shall I lie in your lap?
No, my lord.
I mean my head upon your lap.
I, my lord.
Do you think I meant country matters?
I think nothing, my lord. They felt like two different characters, but in the same situation. Like one's like, please go away. Like, I don't want to talk like this with you in public. This is so awful. And the other one's like, what's going on? Like, can you just explain? It's like so interesting.
It highlights that they're both avoiding something.
Yeah.
With this in prose, it feels like there is subtext, which I think as an actor is quite important to think, oh, it's prose. We need to work out what's happening underneath here.
Doing things where you're just sort of following each other can reveal to you what the subtext is, or give you options of what the subtext might be.
When a character speaks in verse or prose, Shakespeare is making a choice. And that choice can tell us a lot about the character in that moment, what they want, why they want it, and how they go about getting it. Put together, these choices can also show what kind of character they are.
The structure that verse gives us in terms of the fact that we've got the heartbeat, we've got the internal rhythm of the character, we've got the structural thoughts in terms of whether they're running on or whether they're end stopping, whether they're using rhyme, the antithesis that comes within that. It's almost like the structure of verse helps to highlight the inner workings of the character. Whereas when we're just in prose, there's, as you say, there's a lot of other things that we need to be detective-like about.
Okay, so that
Interesting.
gives you a little bit of information about verse and prose, which is what we have been going through, obviously. And this is just another interesting thing about iambic pentameter. I might not watch the whole thing.
The phrase iambic pentameter is simply the name given to the rhythm that Shakespeare and many other writers of his time used in their plays, just like the rhythm a musician might use when writing a song. The rhythm of iambic pentameter is a heartbeat, dee-dum. So iambic pentameter is simply 5 heartbeats. Dee-dum, 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 dee-dum.
So let's have a little look at this in terms of the iambic. I always feel that I need to experience it somehow. To physicalize the rhythm for me is just the way that it gives me an experience of what the meter's doing on the page. So if you take your hand and just place it onto your chest, and let's do a little up, down. So we're just going to try and make that one little beat the most musical beat that we've done today. So we're going to do a up, down, up. Very nice. So let's see where Juliet is. She might be in iambic pentameter. She might not. Who knows? So let's see. Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds. Is that in?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Good. Because there are some of these lines that just feel so satisfying when they land in that rhythm. And similarly, when they don't, it's like, what's going on?
Iambic pentameter is a really useful tool for actors because the rhythm helps give structure to the language. When we are excited, angry, or in love, our heartbeat changes. In the same way, changes to how characters use the iambic pentameter can give us an insight to their emotional and mental state.
Let's just do that again, that come night. Come night, come Romeo, come thou day in night. So yeah, you could condense Romeo to, rather than Romeo, come night, come Romeo, come thou day in night. That makes it fit. But again, there's something about the fact that Romeo's name is in the middle of the as well, isn't there?
It feels like if you kept it Romeo, then the night becomes so much stronger. It's like the yearning's pushing beyond the iambic pentameter.
The yearning to push beyond the meter. That's very nice. It does feel, though, that because we've had such a long sort of time in rhythm, and the fact that her first line is gallop apace, it feels like there's something that actually, if we can keep it in the rhythm of that, it sort of feels like it starts to take on its own momentum, and that you, of course, when you get used to saying someone's name, you might not say Romeo, you say Romeo. So it becomes a little more spoken in some ways that way.
It's like what you're saying there about galloper pace. You can hear the horses galloping. It feels like that in the rhythm.
Yes.
The fiery-footed steeds. She's kind of speaking as the fiery-footed steeds.
Yes, it feels like it gets faster somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we just go from the top of the second page, come gentle night, come loving blackbird night, and do it all together and just see how much momentum we can get through that last little bit, yeah? And
come gentle night, come loving blackbird night, give me my Romeo, and when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun.
Very nice. There's a real drive to it, isn't there?
It's actually easier the faster you go.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't have time to think about the rhythm. It just happens naturally. It flows out.
Yes. I think that's definitely the case with this speech.
Yeah.
Definitely the case. I mean, the fact that you're feeling that might reflect something of what Juliet feels in this moment. You know, the fact that she's saying, come, because there's so many. Yes.
Breathless. She feels breathless.
Yeah.
When we particularly when, you know, Jamie was speeding up. There's a lack of breath in it.
Yeah. You know, in some verse speeches and some moments, there feels like actually there's a real weight to the downbeats, but this does feel like it sort of trips along. I mean, those are all clues that we find, and again, they sort of help you figure out how one might read this speech.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. Now, so if anyone has any questions, again, it's probably a good time to pop them out there, but no, cool. So movement, when you're working on set with camera, you have what is called your mark. And we can use marks in our own rooms when we are filming for ourselves. So you would want to set up your mark as usually a bright coloured something on the floor. We use tape in the industry, or LX tape, something that's bright so that you don't have to look in it. You can see out the corner of your eye or in your peripheral, so that you can walk into a shot and find where you're supposed to be standing. It's actually something that I've done quite a few times when filming self-tapes. When you're on your feet, if you want to walk into a shot, it's good to have where you're going to end your movement marked out beforehand, rather than walking in and trying to find where the best place is to stand so that you're in the right position. So, because if you are faffing about with that, it can throw off the scene and then you'd have to start again. So if you find your mark, that's useful. And when you're staying in the shot, my next slide is going to be 2 clips of me performing a very short bit from As You Like It, and I'll show you we can point out some different parts of movement that are better and that are a little bit more distracting. But as say, when you're in your own space, you set it up, make sure you have a nice clear area where you can move if needed. Like if your character wanted to step towards another character to maybe whisper something to them, but then they tell you to back off, you can take that step back and know that you're in a safe environment, and you're not putting yourself at risk. Yes, so when you're filming, if you're stood, it's easier when you're sat to not make too much movement because you're usually grounded. But when you're stood, you want to make sure that you don't move too much. You might shift your weight from one leg to another. It's good to keep your brain switched on to make sure that you're stood still, unless you're making a movement for the character for a choice. And then when you're moving your eyes, we will move on to that bit in a second, but when you're moving your eyes, you want to keep them quite still and focused on the specific mark. If you were in person, they might have someone stand in next to the camera to be the eye line for you, or they might put a piece of tape next to the camera and be like, that's where you've got to look, because it's like over the shoulder of someone. So you're making sure that your eyes aren't wandering off to different places in the room. You have a nice bright mark to look at, then you can always find where you're going to move back to where the other character's eyesight is as well. And you want to make sure that you don't blink too much, because if you're probably going to watch something now, some piece of acting, and watch their eyes, because a lot of actors that aren't trained specifically end up blinking far too much in a scene. They'll just be like thinking what they're going to be saying and then just blinking away. Whereas when you have a clear idea of what you're saying, you might not blink so much. You might be more intent. Obviously, you still blink because we have to blink, otherwise your eyes will dry out, but it's more intentional, and you're thinking less about blinking than if you're blinking away, and that can be quite distracting to the audience, and it'd be quite annoying for an editor as well to be like, oh, this person keeps blinking, you know. I put here the cover for this book, The Actor and the Camera by Dennis Lawson, who I'm sure some, if not all of you, will know Dennis Lawson. He was in EastEnders. He's a pretty big actor, but he wrote this book, The Actor and the Camera, and it was my Bible when I was at uni. I read it like cover to cover so many times, and I definitely recommend reading it. It's got some great illustrations for camera acting. I was trying to find my copy, but I think it's in the attic, and I couldn't find any of the illustrations online because I wanted to put them in this PowerPoint. But if you are interested in learning some more about camera acting, I definitely recommend that book. It's just very helpful. So this is going to be a little bit interesting. We're going to do a spot the difference, I guess. So this is a little extract. I did this earlier today, so it's not very well lit because my mum doesn't have great lamps around the house. But as I said earlier, this was 3 nesting tables stacked on top of each other to make it my eye line. But we're going to watch, and then I want some people to point out what I could do differently, and what might be a little bit distracting to an audience. So we'll play this one first.
And who might be your mother that you insult, exalt, and all at once over the wretched? Well, though you have no beauty, as by my faith I see no more in you than without candle may go dark to bed, must you be therefore proud and pitiless?
Very short and sweet there. So does anyone want to tell me what I could have changed?
Blinking for a start.
Blinking.
Less movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of bobbing about.
Yeah. Sorry, folks.
Bless you.
Yeah, my throat keeps going, sorry. There was a lot of movement, and it was hard to sort of focus on what you were saying because it was distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was almost comedic, really, wasn't it? Like really, sort of almost I can't think. It just cartoonesque, really, almost.
Yeah.
Because you were doing everything wrong that you should, that you mentioned already.
Okay, cool. I'll watch this other one and see if I fix any of those problems in this one.
Who might be your mother that you insult, exalt, and all at once over the wretched. What? Though you have no beauty, as by my faith I see no more in you than without candle may go dark to bed. Must you be therefore proud and pitiless?
So you see, grounding myself there made it a lot more easy to focus on what I was saying rather than just be like, why is she moving about so much? And the eye lines there, I used a mark on the side of my laptop to reference who, this is Rosalind as Ganymede. She was referencing, what was his name? Silvius. And she's talking to Phoebe. So I used Phoebe as the camera's lens eye to talk to directly, and then referenced off to the side to reference to Silvius. But I made all my movements quite exact and a lot more controlled so that it's not just like frantic movements, because as soon as you start moving too quickly on a camera, you can become blurred and it's just not a pleasant experience to watch. So let's move on. So we're going to do an eyeline exercise. This is going to be interesting. This is where we will need 2 people to start off with. If we have any volunteers.
I will always volunteer.
There we
Of
go.
course you will, Ruben. My little shrinking violet.
Classic. I'm such a wallflower.
Would anyone else like to give this a go? This is where we will need our pieces of scrap paper or post-it notes. And I've got a little script.
Go on, I shall put my efforts where my mouth is. Just somebody else volunteer then?
Oh,
Okay, I'll do it with Ruben then.
Okie dokie. So what I would like you to do is, Rob, if you write Ruben or whatever on your piece of paper and stick that just to the, just to the right of your camera. And then Ruben, I want you to do just to the left of your camera. And I'm going to try and get this a little bigger so I can see your faces. Okay, I'm just going to come out of screen share for a second. How do I do that? Stop the share. And I want to see. Okay, so Rob, if you can just say random words over and over, looking at the piece of scrap paper you've just said that I just want to test something out.
Random words.
Yeah.
Cat, dog, iambic pentameter, Shakespeare, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet.
Cool.
Okay.
And
very random.
I'm laughing, Mike Carroll, will you? That was pretty good then.
that's good, nice one. And Ruben, if you can do the same.
Just random words.
Yeah.
Sicily, kumquat, extravagant, fantastic, wondrous, elephant.
Lovely. Great. So this is going to be a little bit interesting to be able to see. What I would like to do is get people into rooms in a bit, but I'll go back to screen share for now. Screen share now. So what we will do is, in the next slide, I've got a short script, and I would like Rob to be A and Ruben to be B. And if you can just read them off for now, and then we will go through it again and use your eye lines instead to direct the lines towards each other. So this is your script. And if you'd like to give that a read, don't worry about your eye lines to start off with. We will do that in a second.
What are you doing here?
Dave asked me to come.
It's only supposed to be family.
What does that make me?
You tell me.
Can you not just let it go?
It's not that simple.
All I want is the chance to start over.
Cool. And then if we go through that again, but each time you deliver your line, if you reference toward your eye line, if you reference back towards your eye line and go from the top. We'll see if that works out.
What are you doing here?
Dave asked me to come.
It's only supposed to be family.
What does that make me?
You tell me.
Can you not just let it go?
It's not that simple.
All I want is the chance to start over.
Can we notice the difference there between where they're looking? Does it feel a little bit more like they're talking to each other? I would love to be able to just get it up so it's just the two of them, but I don't know.
Well, can you not put us in? Oh, hang on. Yeah, it's that.
Yeah, the problem is because the screen is being shared.
Because your screen sharing is.
I didn't have the pictures on
Ruben,
big, so I couldn't really see.
You can see them if you, even though it's screen shared, where you can see the people down the right hand side, you can set it to show there's a square that's got like loads of multiple squares. If you click that and then expand it, you can, it's not speaker view, it's like you can see everybody, but you can expand, like we can expand that. So I've just expanded everybody over the dialogue because I wasn't reading the dialogue, so I could see you, Rob and Ruben, and I could see that where your eyes were going. So
I wasn't prepared though, I should say, as I know I could do that. I don't know if everyone else did, because I didn't really realise I didn't do that.
We can do that again.
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were saying you didn't know how to do it.
No, I know how to do it. It's just that because I wasn't really thinking about it, I didn't do that, if that makes sense.
That's all right.
If we had the script sort of in front of us, then you could put it on just on speaker view then, and everybody could see it that way, couldn't they? Will you remember it?
What we can do is everyone who isn't Rob and Ruben, if you go on to the boxes with the cameras showing and click on the little box that says show small active speaker video, and then just make that bigger. And then we'll get Rob and Ruben to go through that scene again with their fixed eye lines. And then we should be able to.
I haven't got that option on my, I'm on an iPad, so I haven't got.
Oh.
If you tap the picture with where you can see Lainey's voice, well, it'll be me now, won't it? If you tap on the my face, it should
make it bigger.
Bring up my face.
Oh right, yeah. Forgot. Thank you.
I don't know what happened then. Hang on, I tapped on your face and everything went weird. So just, what do you mean tap on your face? It doesn't matter.
You're not doing anything, Rob. You need to read the script. You don't need to see me. You get to see me enough.
What we like to, Mike, is the thing.
Okay. So we're doing it to camera again, are we, Lainey?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Dave asked me to come.
It's only supposed to be family.
What does that make me?
You tell me.
Can you not just let it go?
It's not that simple.
All I want is the chance to start over.
Great. Good job, guys. So can we feel how the eye line, instead of looking directly into the lens, which kind of feels like you're looking at the person on the other side. So if I'm looking directly now into the middle, it looks like I'm kind of staring you down. But if I direct slightly towards the left, then it could feel like I'm looking just past the camera and looking towards the person on the other side instead of like just sort of being a bit confrontational. Looking directly into the camera would be really useful if you wanted to do the monologues and the soliloquies. When they're talking to themselves, you can directly talk to the audience. But when we're using our sight lines, we can direct that view so it doesn't feel as if we're just talking to a laptop instead. So I'm going to go back. If you can look back at the slideshow, the next thing I'm going to go through is circles of attention. This is my own interpretation of circles of attention. Stanislavski method idea. So if you've heard of Stanislavski, he was the he birthed the method acting technique. But what we will discuss is your different like creating the world inside your own brain so that your character is immersed and that you're not just standing in a room talking to your own computer. So questions that you need to sort of ask yourselves would be, if you're walking into a scene, what is the surroundings that you can feel? What can you touch? What can you taste, if you can taste anything? Are there smells? So are you walking into a kitchen and something smells really nice, someone's baking bread? Or if you've just come in out of the cold, you could be taking off your coat and you're just trying to warm yourself up. That just gives it more of you've not just stepped into this scene. Things have been happening beforehand, and now you are moving into this next area where you could have thoughts going on in your head, and then someone starts to talk to you and you kind of come out of your own little world dazed. But where is your attention at that time when you are in the scene? So in a monologue, you might be quite internalized, thinking about what is happening to you specifically at that time. The next sort of circle of attention might be you're going into a room to search for something or for someone. So you've got, you can see the room around you and where something might be that you're looking for specifically. If you decide where that is beforehand, then you can direct your attention towards that area. That's another use for your sticky notes. Like if your character is directed to go and look out of a window, where's the window in your room that you're then delivering to? And if you put your little mark on that, your sticky note, then you know where your eye line's going to go each time that you're referencing that within the scene. Yeah, so are you inside, are you outside? That kind of thing. Is something playing on your mind that takes you completely out of that area? Are you thinking about your loved ones who are miles away that you haven't seen, and that you're thinking about a conversation that you had in the past? But these are all important questions that you need to ask yourself when you're going into a scene. And it's usually only the things that are going on inside the character's own head that affect your performance. And then the things that are going on inside your co-actor's head, you might not necessarily know what their intentions are. You only know what they give you verbally or physically, but you can throw them a curveball and change your own intention towards them so that you can play off each other more. And that's where the idea of listening to each other really comes into play as well, because they might say something in a certain way that might make your character think, oh, I didn't realize that they're angry at me. So that might throw you off a little bit, just, oh, I didn't hear that in the way that I was expecting to. So you can play with that as well. Continuity for acting for camera is something I very much enjoy. I would love to be one of those people who stands at the side with their book watching everyone and be like, well, they've moved there and they're not supposed to do that, and their hair's going all over the place, and that bottle's supposed to be turned the other way around, that kind of thing. But something to do with continuity that we can actually use are things like costume. So if you go away during the filming and then you come back and you've taken your jumper off, but you haven't really thought about that, you might want to make note of everything that you're wearing beforehand, so that you, like, if you roll up your sleeves, then you can do it again on a line. Like, okay, so if I was doing To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, I'd want to then remember that I've done those things on that specific line. So if you go back again, you want to pick it up, you want to reset to the beginning and make sure that you are doing those movements again, so that when it's cut together, you don't like end up with, in one shot, you've got a jacket on, the next shot, your jacket's off, or you've got hair tucked behind your ear in one shot and then the next shot it's not, but then in the next shot again it is. It can play with people, especially people like me who look out for that kind of thing. It's very annoying. If you're using props, again, if you pick it up on a certain line, you want to make a mental note of when you pick it up and then when you're putting it down again, so that when things are cut together, they make sense. And if you take a break in between filming scenes and you have even slightly the different amount of energy, it can really throw off the editing of the scene. So you want to do Michael a favor there and not be really happy in one scene delivering your lines, and then in the next you sort of like you've lost that enthusiasm, that energy, and it won't cut together nicely. And if you want to make physical notes during a scene, we have the ability to just have a notebook at the side, make notes for yourself, and then refer back to them, or if you can make a mental note, that's good too. I usually make physical notes because I am super forgetful. That's just me. And then react, don't act. So as I've been saying throughout this whole thing, you want to listen to everything that everyone is saying, because if you are just focusing on your own lines, you might miss the certain intonation that someone uses that could really help with your performance and give you the information that you need to actually make it make sense, especially in Shakespeare. It's good to know your own lines and everyone else's lines too, which is a lot of work. But when you do and everyone understands what everyone else is saying, it will make it so much clearer for the audience to understand as well. When you're acting, when we're doing, as you saw before, with the speaker view acting, even if one of the actors is speaking and the other one is just listening, if you're reacting with your facial expressions and your breath, you can add more to the story, because even if the camera, even if you're not speaking, the camera might still be on you, still picking up what you're doing. So that whole thing, rather than like if we're going to be having our lines on the screen, you don't want to be reading ahead to make sure that you know what you're going to be saying. If you're listening to what the other actor is saying, then the next bit, if you've rehearsed it enough, will come naturally. But you want to make sure that you're never blank faced, because if that's when the camera gets you, then you'll look a bit gormless really. And yeah, the smallest reactions make for the best acting as well. I understand what you're saying, vice versa, yes. So when I was at school, we talked about this thing called the actor's brain. When you switch on your actor's brain, you are in the moment and you're acting and you're giving it your all, but you've always got to have 30% of your awareness on the real world. So on any distractions that might happen, on your working space. So if you need to move, you don't trip, that kind of thing. You always want to make sure that you have part of your actor's brain switched on, so that you also don't get lost completely in a scene. Like you might be completely, you might be really emotional in a scene, but you don't want to give yourself 100% over to that emotion, or you might not be able to continue with the scene. You've got to remind yourself that it is just an acting job. It's not going to be taking over your entire moment. I don't know what I'm saying now. I'm just spamming.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
yeah, because a lot of actors, if they immerse themselves too much, they take it home with them, and then it can affect their mental well-being, you know, over certain times if it's a particularly really heavily emotional piece.
Heath Ledger, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Jared Leto started like mailing things to his co-stars when he was playing the Joker.
But also, of course, I've read lately, and I've seen interviews with what's his name, Bill Skarsgård, over it Pennywise in it, and it really, really affected him, and he had to go on holiday to put the character away, and he felt like he was running away from the character. So yeah, I think that makes perfect sense.
That's quite the character to run away from.
If you're going to run away from anyone, it's got to be Pennywise.
Yeah. Plus, also, if you decide to make a big gesture and you end up knocking over a lamp or whatever, then you've got more consequences to deal with then. What is my next scene? I can't remember. Oh, let's have a break. Okay. And this is just something that I want to play about with, because this isn't like actual technique or anything. This is just me trying to figure out how we would be able to make it so that we have eye lines for multiple people in a scene. So what I was thinking is when we start off with a scene, this will be Rob really, but for everyone to know, if we decide where everyone's standing as if they were standing in a circle. So the first scene, when we have Macbeth and Banquo and the witches, I was thinking if we have everyone stood in the round in our minds, then we can decide where we place each eye line so that we can gesture to each character and know who we're looking at each point. So questions at the beginning of each scene, we'll need to ask ourselves how many characters there are, so how many sight lines, how close the proximity of each character, and the status between them. So that would like indicate whether or not we would be on a tilt or not, if we're looking up into the camera or down on another character, and who is to your sides. So I mean, jump in if anyone has any ideas on how we might actually be able to do this. This is just everything that I've been trying to figure out in my head for the last couple of weeks when I said I would put something together.
Well, I see this as very much, I put which one in the center of the three witches for a start, and which is Pippa, is Pippa which one? And then advise her which witch is either side of her as she looks into the camera. And when she refers, and just before the other one's line starts, then I would suggest she looks to her left or right, whichever way that witch stands. So that it lets the audience know that that witch is there and third witch is there. But she can do that way. In terms of, and obviously this is a learning curve for me. I've never done something this big on Zoom. It's easy to do one-man plays and the odd characters. And in terms of Macbeth and Banquo, they also need to know which witches are and who talks to them. And then obviously, I mean, technically, it wrecks your head if you sit and think about it too much. But I don't think it's as technically difficult as it's actually on first glance looks, because then you would say to Macbeth, right, Macbeth, you're on the right or you're on the left of Banquo, shall we say? No, hang on. Yeah, you're on the left of Banquo, and you will be referring to that witch three. So you're quite right. The scene, if you set the scene like that, then the actors could know where they're looking at any one time. I think this is a good thing, that this, although it looks quite simplified saying that in the round, what you could do is, rather than drawing arrows and making it a circle, you could draw sort of lines going from to which one, to which two, which three, and number them, and then go sight line 3, sight line 2, sight line 1 when you on each line that you deliver, so that they know exactly where their eyes should be looking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know that sounds convoluted, but that's something that Mike Carroll can help me with, because he's gone on to do all day.
Would it not just be easier to have, because Macbeth and Banquo are next to each other, so when they're talking to each other, they just look off camera, and then when they're talking to the witches, which 3, which 1, which 2,
which.
So they're
that's
that
what
way
we're going to
we
try
can
and
have,
do.
Yeah, and then anytime it's, because all the witches are going to be looking at each other side to side, because they're next to each other, and then when they're talking at Macbeth
if you
and
have
Banquo,
5 people on screen, can you judge where each person is?
No,
I mean, you
we're
can't
not,
place them in
obviously
2,
we're
can
all
you?
we're all acting alone in this because of lockdown. Obviously we're all isolated, so there'll be nobody on screen. It won't be done in, I think it's probably going to be done mainly in speaker view, rather than in gallery view. Mainly in speaker view. I think it works better that way, and therefore if you had, as long as Banquo knows where Macbeth is standing and always looks that way in the scene, always looks to the one side, to the right, to the left of him rather, and then when they're talking then to the witches who are meant to be in front of them, if they're talking to witch 3, it will be sight line, so you'd have sight line 1, sight line 2, sight line 3, it'll be sight line, witch line 1, witch line 2, witch line 3, and looking that way. And yeah, it's kind of going to be difficult, but once you've rehearsed it a few times, then it should become fairly simple, in the same way that Ruben and I did that thing that Lainey wrote, that little bit of script. Once we knew what we were doing and where we were meant to be looking, it just then becomes natural. So although in terms of the initial sort of thinking about this, it does sound quite difficult. I don't think it's going to be as difficult as we think, but that will come down to when I direct each scene ready to film, and they're only small scenes in Macbeth, most of them anyway. When I direct them, I draw the sight lines on a little sort of chart or something, so that people know where they're looking at any one line, maybe.
And then when you're actually stood in the thing, it's having your pieces of paper, your post-it notes, etc., to refer back to, so that you're always looking at the same spot rather than just looking to the side. You could end up looking at a different place each time you look to the side.
Yeah, you want to sort of like look center, sort of like that, rather than like that. But the other thing, of course, is that what they could do is, before the scene starts, they could write which 1, which 2, which 3 onto post-it notes or little tiny bits of paper and stick them at the top of the computer like we've done here, so that they know that the center is which 1, whatever, that's which 3 there, and that's which 2 there. And then, you know, if they, then they, you know, it's almost like having the face in front of you to speak to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Post-it note there, yeah.
Exactly.
But the 3 witches will have to be on the together as well, won't they? They can't have them all in the speaker view. In
the witches will be together, but we'll see the witches after we. So obviously it'll go to speaker view for Macbeth and Banquo, and then onto the 3 witches in a gallery view. Okay, and you'll be in the right order, but they need to know where they're talking to. Is the point. And then also, of course, what Lenny was saying before, which kind of I didn't think about, was changing the angles somewhat, because you know, the kings should always be looked up to, and I think even when Macbeth at the beginning is, does Macbeth talk to Duncan? I don't know. Whoever's talking to Duncan at the beginning before he dies, and vice versa, when the underlings are talking to Macbeth as the Thane, they need to sort of like almost look up, really, like they're almost subservient and bowing, and it creates the relationship then. So that's something I hadn't given thought of, but I think it's well worth me thinking about when I break these scenes down.
Regarding where each of them are as well, particularly, I was just thinking with the witches scene, the witches would have to move at some when Banquo and Macbeth appear. Yeah. Because if I were to have 2 friends, we wouldn't all sit in a line and talk to each other like that. I'd have one there and then one there. And then when Banquo and Macbeth come in, they'd then replace them, and the witches would have to move to the sides.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
But I can draw a diagram for that. I'm into it now.
Well, it's a challenge, this.
Yeah, something I thought about the other day, and I don't know if it's absolutely daft, but like I've got a phone and I've got a laptop. So I could log on to a Zoom twice and set the phone up as a long shot and the laptop as a near shot. But I don't know how useful that would be.
I don't know that it would be in this instance, Pip. I mean, it's good of you to think about that, but I think that would create a nightmare in editing, really. And it would mean then the other two witches would have to do the same, I suspect. So that we get long shots and close shots and all that. That's something that we would do if we were filming this properly outside. But in terms of doing it on Zoom makes life a bit difficult from an editing point of view. Because the point is that the point. I know I see what you're saying, but I think from this point of view, this is about making a.
Well, it might not be useful for the witches, but it might be useful in something else, I suppose.
Yeah.
The problem is, of course, is there's only certain actors who live in the same household who will be filmed together, but that could be useful for making, actually, do Lainey and Ruben, are they ever actually in a scene together?
I don't think so, no.
No, I don't think so. That's a bit of a waste.
But they are in Road to Hell, so that's.
Oh, okay, but it means that sort of thing anyway. Whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Back to Lady then.
Yeah. The next slide was going to be us figuring that out, but we're not going to do that now because I think it's going to be too much hassle and we can't get into rooms. So we're going to move on. This is the final slide, guys. Don't worry. It's not like going to go on for ages and ages. But yeah. So.
Be like that. So I enjoyed it.
Good, I'm glad. Okay. I've not. What?
Oh,
yes, you have, really. Oh, sure you have.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's very tough as an ex-trainer. It's very tough for your first presentation.
Yeah.
It's good. It's all right. You're doing okay.
And I didn't practice it at all. It was just like, yes. So last thing is confidence. When I was working on Shakespeare, our director would always say, just keep giving more and more and more until you feel utterly ridiculous and then dial it back. Because the more you give, the more opportunities you have for moments of brilliance and moments of character decision that might not have been seen before. So if you make your characters larger than life, and then if it's just too much, then we'll be like, right, okay, just dial it back a little bit, but make a fool of yourself. Make it like the thing that holds us back as actors from giving the massive performances that you see that some of these crazy actors do on the big screen. They're not thinking about what they look like or what other people are going to think about them. Like if anyone saw the Joker film, you wouldn't have asked Joaquin Phoenix if he was being self-conscious while he was on set. He was just the character and the craziness that he needed to show to be that character. So you've got to be bold and make those choices. And if you ever feel like you don't understand something or it's not quite clicking for you, then ask as many questions as you can. I was always terrified to ask questions because I thought that asking questions meant that I didn't know what I was doing. But when you're asking questions, then you will find out the information that you need. Then you can make sure that you're on the same page as the director, that you're on the same page as your co-actors, that you know what's going on. So ask those questions that make you feel silly. The sillier the question feels, the more interesting the response is going to be. And then you'll get that information that you need to be able to perform to the best you can. And now I want everyone to make a really stupid face. I'm going to start, And then I want to go through everyone to make yourself feel really, really silly and self-conscious, but make a really ugly, stupid face, like I'm gonna do stuff like this. And
glimpse of your future there, Ruben.
just want to make you look really, really, really ridiculous, and just let go of all of your insecurities and make sure everyone's looking at you. There we go. Wonderful.
Great. It is a stupid face.
Helen, yes. Come on. Wonderful. Michael, come on, get in. Come on, join in. Let go of those insecurities. Just make your face like really like crazy. Yes, that's it. Yes, Piva, yes. Ruben, amazing. Sue, let's see some crazy faces. Yes, love it. Oh my goodness, I've seen some great faces. Oh my, yeah.
Can I just say one of the things that I think that I mean, the thing about acting is you can't know everything, even if you think you do. And there is, you know, in some ways, in a lot of ways, there's no real or right or wrong answer to some of the questions anyway, unless it's technical. But what, I mean, and I suspect Claire and Adam, and obviously Ruben and yourself have been through this at drama school, the absurdity of some of the stuff that you actually do at proper drama school, you know, sort of like they have you all sort of being monkeys in improvisation classes, picking each other's nits and sort of nicking bananas off each other, and you're walking around like, and it really is, you can feel really stupid. And at the time you think, why did they make it? I remember I've told people this before. I was in improvisation class in a private drama school, and they had and it was quite an expensive class actually, and they had these wonderfully sort of like at the back chairs, and for some reason they asked us to do nursery rhymes, to act out a nursery rhyme without words. So I decided to do Humpty Dumpty. I don't know why, but then so I sat on the back of the ladder back chair, but on the top of the ladder back, and my bum just went right through all the four. You just ruined this set of chairs. I was forgiven for it, but I thought, well, it's so should I forget me to do something silly like nursery rhymes. So you haven't, I mean, the group hasn't experienced the stupidity of all that, but you say stupid, but what it does do is give, if you can do that and come through the other side, you can do anything. You know, it's that sort of silly behavior that gives you the confidence, really.
Yeah.
One that we always used to do was you pick either the character that you're playing or one of the characters that you're playing, and decide what animal they are, what their spirit animal would be, and then interact with each other as those animals. So like when I was in Bad Girls, I said Fenner was a hyena because he's a bit of a rat man. So yeah, then I just had to go around being a hyena and like building up to people who I was pro, and then getting away from people who I was against, attacking people who I thought I could attack and get away with it, that kind of thing.
I did a movement unit and I was a hyena.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
Imagine.
I had to do a big performance in front of my whole class, and it was like 60 odd people, and I had to be a hyena interacting with like a squirrel. What was she? What's the thing? A chameleon. There was a chameleon, which was interesting. Someone played a deer. Actually, she was really cool. She did a very graceful deer. Yeah, but I had to be a hyena. And
does anyone remember when George Galloway pretended to be a cat in Big Brother?
Oh,
do you remember that?
Is that all last slide? If so, I'd love if you could put it back on gallery view so I can see people. I'm squinting to see people. Is that the last slide?
The last thing is the penis jokes or funny jokes. I want everyone to do their funny jokes. And just not worry about it being crude or it being a little bit racy or anything like that. Just tell it as if it's the funniest thing you've ever heard.
Can we do it in gallery view then, please? Because I'm squinting to see. That's better. Yeah.
There we go.
Right, do you all think you've learned something tonight?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks,
Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I think that the difference for me, the difference is between stage acting, where often you've got grand gestures and big body movements, to this, which is just not that at all, and so it's very new.